Welcome back to the Spirit Island podcast. My name is Thomas, and today I'll be having a chat with Alex. We're having a discussion about one of the most fundamental aspects to the game, fear. What does it do? What is it? And why does it matter? Alex, could you give us a quick synopsis of what fear is in this game?
Why, thank you, Thomas. Firstly, I just have to say, you called our podcast Spirit Island. That is not our podcast name.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome to Spirited Discussion, everyone. Fear. I don't know. What really is fear? I've never really thought about it other than a mechanism to win the game.
In the rulebook, that's what it is. And the game does a really good job at thematically hiding what it is, but it's victory points.
Really?
Yeah, shocking, right?
Genuinely, it did surprise me. When I saw this in your notes, I'm like, I mean, that makes sense. But, I've never thought about it that way.
They do such a good job at hiding that statement. If you think about it this is 4 points to get a card and 9 cards wins the game. If I get 36 points, I win the game. Well, this is just another Euro in disguise.
I guess part of what hides it, too, is that, in most co-ops I've played, it's not really about points.
Very rarely is it. It's only whenever you see a Euro-style game trying to be a cooperative or a single-player game, it says, get 50 points. And if it's a higher difficulty, get 75 points. Well, Spirit Island does that too, by just adding fear cards, increments of 4.
Yeah. It's a genius design, really.
It is. It completely obfuscates the idea that these are points, and it makes them feel so satisfying to get, something that points almost never successfully do.
Yeah. Well, the whole theme behind it is the idea that you are routinely scaring people that are invading the island, and the more you scare them, the less likely they are to want to continue to be here.
Yeah. A lot of cards like Miner's Powers and your personal cards, unique cards, produce fear, but a big source of fear is through destruction of their buildings, their towns, and their cities. And we see the fear as almost like an event deck for them being terrified as a whole, a collective.
Yeah, no, it's very, very clever, and it's one of those things where, I guess especially as you're newer to the game, it becomes very easy to hone in on the board itself and focus on trying to prevent the invaders from winning, that you don't always notice, I should be racking up these points myself. Just because you're getting preventing the invaders from winning doesn't mean you're really getting closer to winning. It's a very interesting, not quite tug of war.
Oftentimes, when you're playing, you can see that you're close to a certain threshold, because it's not just get all of the cards and you win. It's get some of the cards and winning becomes easier. It's still a condition most of the time. And so if you're playing a spirit that maybe doesn't produce a lot of fear, like River, Surges, and Sunlight, you can start to clump all these things together and get really explosive amounts of fear by using your innate power to clear entire lands. And this gives you big boons really quickly, whereas other spirits like Bodan will just generate so much fear every single turn. It feels more like a race, because they can't remove any buildings.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I brought up 2 different spirits that feel very different on the fear spectrum. Whenever you're playing the game, where do you like to sit with a spirit that you play? Do you want a spirit that makes a lot of fear, something that's a more controlling spirit, can make fear in the future, or somewhere in the middle?
I kind of feel like... So I really like Breath of Darkness down your spine, and that is inherently a very fear-based spirit. But otherwise, I don't feel like I play a ton of heavy fear spirits. I feel like I am much more in the category of wanting to destroy a town or a city to generate my fear than I am to have cards that just kind of have a lot of fear printed on them. It just feels more satisfying to me. How about yourself?
I agree. I really like Breath of Darkness down your spine, and they're sucking up all of the invaders and spooking them in their special little zone. But I think that's one of the exceptions. More often than not, I like to be able to blow stuff up and really control the board and find that major power and go boom.
How many fear spirits are there really, that are heavy into spear?
There's at least four that I can think of off the top of my head. I'll
Okay.
probably miss one here. But there's Breath of the Darkness, Down Your Spine,
Yep.
uh, Bodan, Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
I would categorize Many Minds, Move as One as a fear spirit.
Okay. Many Minds is many things, but yeah.
Many things, yeah, absolutely. But they pump out fear left and right.
Mhm.
And same thing with Eyes. Both of these
Okay.
two produce a lot of fear. Even though they're doing a lot of other things, they're making a lot of fear just innately.
I would also say Shroud
Shroud for sure.
doesn't do a great job at a lot of things, but hey, that's what it is. And then I guess of like the base game low complexities, that would be Shadow's deal, although it doesn't always really feel like it.
In addition to that, like we've seen several spirits just produce fear through their cards
Mhm.
that aren't exactly fear spirits.
Yeah.
And so you can produce fear regularly without being one of these fear spirits, whatever that means. It's
Mhm.
kind of nebulous. But you know it when you see it.
Like Heart of the Wildfire, right? It's not fear is not its main thing. Its main thing is burning things down, destruction. But three of its four cards have fear printed on them. With one of them having the ability to get to four total fears if you play things correctly. So I think I am in that category of like, yeah, I like spirits like Wildfire that have good potential for fear, but that isn't their main thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call Wildfire a fear spirit by any means. They make fear here and there, but that's just not the feeling that they provoke while playing the game.
Yeah, 100%. I guess it really depends on how you want to define fear spirits.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm going to leave that to be a little bit nebulous. I know we're talking about fear as a whole, but this is one of those things that you know it when you see it.
Well, something I did want to bring up real quick is just the fact
Yeah.
that on the spirit boards, one of the metrics that the game tells you about is fear. It says how much fear is this spirit. And so, like, again, to go back to Heart of the Wildfire, offense is the highest stat on its stat board, but fear's pretty high as well. So that's kind of interesting.
I believe that, considering almost every card that they make produces fear, including placing their presence frequently produces fear.
It's true.
Fear is one of those things that scales kind of weird in this game to me.
Yep.
Like, throughout the game, you have the same number of lands per player as you go up in player count, and so the same number of builds, same number of ravages, same number of explorers, etc. But fear stays at 4 per player, and it feels off every single time you go past 3 players.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that design wise, in order to properly fix this, would be a math equation, which is not generally what you want to see on your, on your instruction booklet. Um, but no, I completely agree with you. And there's a lot of downsides to playing this game with just one spirit, true solo. But one of the big upsides is for fear making a fear card is satisfying as all get out. With a lot of spirits, you can consistently be pulling at least one fear card every single turn. The fact that like paralyzing fright, unthresholded is one fear card, and then thresholded is two fear cards is really really nice.
Yeah, I think that you're tugging at the strings as to how it feels weird with scaling.
Yeah.
It's that one card, one power, produces enough fear that when you're playing solo, you just make so much. And that's awesome. It feels so good. But when you play that same power, for you to make the same number of cards, everyone else has to be doing that too. But there aren't actually that many powers that are generating 8 fear with one card.
Yeah, the very few times I've played four-player games, looking at it and seeing 16 fear, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously you work together to get there, but it just kind of feels like earning that fear card is hard.
Absolutely. And part of the challenge isn't just like sometimes you produce different quantities of fear through the cards you find, but it's easier to create pockets on the island where no invaders build at all. And so you don't have as many buildings to destroy to then generate fear, even though on paper you should.
Hmm. What do you think feels the most natural? I kind of think 2 players 8 fear feels like the best. I mean, obviously 1 player 4 fear feels really really good, but that feels a little maybe a little too good almost. In terms of balance, I feel like maybe it's just because I play 2 player a lot. I just feel like that 8 fear is like a sweet place to be.
In almost every aspect of this game, I think two-player feels best.
Mm.
If one person finds that cool fear-producing card, the other person doesn't have to do that as well. They can find ways to support, enhance, and make it so that both people are making that card the best that it can be.
Yeah, that's true.
Whenever you have three people, having two people support that one card just doesn't divide as well. It doesn't feel as good.
Yeah, it's interesting. It is one of those things that I just feel like you're right, it feels off, but I don't know what the quote solution to that would be.
I don't think there is a solution. I
Hmm.
think that games are more than the sums of their parts, and this is just one of those parts that's like, it's a little off, but the game is pretty good still.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I guess a hypothetical situation could be you double the amount of fear cards, I guess. I mean, that would have other balance issues. Um, and I mean, I feel like I'm talking a lot in terms of fear to get you to a fear card, which is one metric of looking at it. Of course, the other metric is how much fear do you have to generate overall to win the game. And of course, part of that is dependent on, well, how are you going to win the game? You know, are you getting the fear victory, going all the way, clearing the deck, getting the maximum amount of fear, or are you trying to get enough to get to the third tier because that's the easiest one to rid of buildings? You know, like
Yeah,
it's interesting, right?
it is. So something that's really interesting about player scaling is it feels a little more difficult to get a fear card, but whenever you do get a fear card, the odds of it being useful or good actually go up,
Oh, that's a good point.
right? If it says destroy one town, you're like, well, on each board, that doesn't do anything on my board, and there's something on yours, sure. But if there's 10 boards, like, oh, that we'll find a town somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. Me and you just played a game right before this podcast where we hit 3 tier 3 fear cards, and I'm not saying they did nothing, but none of them did anything about the one city left standing in our way to victory. And they just did not feel very good for Terror level 3 fear cards.
For those cards in particular, they were kind of taunting us because they all said get rid of a city if these conditions are met, and this one city was just standing by itself away from all of these conditions.
Like 2 lands it was next to were like heavily bad landed lands that you made into unhospitable places, but that one lone city was still standing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is actually a really good point. Is just that the more boards and the more players, the more likely that a fear card will be able to do at least something, if not a good thing that is very helpful to you.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is really unique about the way that the Fear deck is structured is that it's not just you reach X fear, do Y ability. You get a card, and that card grows with you throughout the game. You
Hmm.
have Terror level 1, 2, and 3 effects. And sometimes the difference between 1, 2, and 3 is night and day. In other times, it's a slight improvement, and sometimes it's actually a downgrade. Almost never. I think there's only a handful of cards that it's a downgrade, in my opinion, from 1 to 2.
Hmm.
But the fact that it's not, oh, you got your fear card, this time, just defend 3 everywhere. It's not that. Sometimes it is, but you don't know that.
All right. Shall we talk about the power cards that make fear?
Absolutely. There's a whole bunch of them.
There's about 35 minor powers that generate fear. I'm pretty sure it's 35. I just counting's really hard, so but yeah, there's about 35 cards that generate fear like natively at minor. And when I say natively, I just mean a card that does 2 damage could theoretically generate you fear by killing a town, but that's not counting this. This is just things that have fear printed on them
Absolutely.
unconditionally. Unconditionally outside of the conditions that apply. So there's about 18 minors that generate just 1 fear, a maximum at 1 fear. And then there's several more of those that generate one fear, and then there's either thresholds to hit with elements, or potentially thresholds to hit with other things, like, if there's a disease here, plus one fear. And then some of these are also option cards that are like, you either add a strife, or do one damage and get one fear. Those sort of effects. So a good like third of the minor deck will do something for you fear wise.
Do you think that drafting minor powers with fear on it is like something that you should go out of your way to do? Or do you think just blowing up the buildings is good enough?
Generally speaking, there's not enough buildings to get you to victory. Like just by doing that. If you only generated fear with damage, you'd have to destroy 36 cities to gain 9 fear cards to win a 2-player game at the lowest difficulty, at just 9 fear cards.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of cities. Of course, that doesn't take into account the towns, but like you basically have to generate fear in order to win this game, unless you're trying to do a victory at terror level 1 or 2.
I could imagine a world where this game was published and there wasn't fear on cards, but the buildings produced twice as much fear, or the threshold was half as high. Fear on the cards almost feels like it's a lever to play with, and it produces like more dynamic games where you don't have to destroy the buildings. You can push for this direction, or this card and this card do something similar, but this one defends and this one makes fear. How are you going to deal with that?
Right. It allows for there to be multiple different play modes in the game, I suppose. Everyone has to generate fear somehow, but you can generate the bulk of it by doing towns and city destruction. Just probably not all of it. But then it does also allow for spirits like Bodan to come in, and that's their whole shtick.
Yeah. So, if we're trying to destroy all of the buildings, you don't have to win by going through the entire deck. Destroying all the buildings just gets you there, assuming you're at least deep enough into the deck.
Yeah. Do you know the minor power that, in theory, can generate the most fear in the minor deck?
As far as I'm aware, it's the Rotfly one, where it's like 4 fear, and it never actually makes 4 fear, though, right?
Well, Rotfly is a good guess, but Land of Right's Rejection is technically the one that could have the most. Now, granted, the way this works is that invaders do not build and target land this turn. 1 fear per town/city, or 1 fear per Dahan, whichever is less. So you would need to get 5 Dahan into that land, as well as have 5 towns/cities to generate the 5 fear that would beat out Rotflies. But
that's hilarious.
In some sort of magical Christmas land, that's possible.
I bet if you're playing, Layer Lure and you're having a house party.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not in England, never in England, but elsewhere perhaps.
That's awesome.
I thought that was an interesting bit of trivia. It's one of those cards I see a lot, and I'm just like, this card is neat. I get like 0 fear on this card routinely. Not 0 fear, like 1 fear, because there has to be a Dahan there to target it.
I am a big fan of that card. I think it's really cool. The other part says push 3, and that's pretty strong.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting. I would not have made that connection without you saying it. That's awesome. I like that.
The one that you brought up, Tormenting Rotflies, for anyone who doesn't know, it is in add 1 disease, or if target land has invaders, 2 fear. If disease is present, plus 1 fear. If blight is present, plus 1 fear. So it is another one that's in theory 4 fear, probably not actually going to be.
It's 4 fear on 1 spirit.
Yeah, well, oh yeah, if you're plague, for sure.
It's almost never 4 though.
Yeah.
So there's another type of card in the minor deck that doesn't do anything except make fear. There's a lot of defend and make fear, add a token and make fear, or do this or make fear. But there are some cards that just make fear. Portents of Disaster, Rain of Blood, I think those are the only 2. What do you think about those?
To me, that depends on, obviously a lot of things, but For one, it depends on how many card plays you have as a spirit. If you're a spirit that doesn't have a lot of card plays, if you're a memory, you're just not. You don't want these cards. You don't want cards that do effectively nothing. Granted, now that I say that, if you are playing as memory, theoretically you can flip the fear card and say, "Oh, well, that fear card's really good. Let me take this card because I just really badly want to get to that next fear card." But yeah, for me, I want to be able to affect the board first, and then if I'm a spirit with like 4 or 5 card plays, great, sure, I'll take that, and especially if it's on element, like that's great too. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that they skew the gameplay a little bit too much for me into the fear generation side, specifically because of their cost. I think that they do a little too much for a little too little.
Really?
Yeah, 3 fear for 0 it's just a lot. And whenever you're playing a spirit that can abuse that situation, then it starts to feel overwhelming.
If we're talking about Reign of Blood, I will say it is slow. You have to be one within a sacred site of invaders to use it,
Yes.
which are not giant downsides. It's very doable, but there are some downsides to it.
Yeah, there's other upsides too. Like they have 3 elements, which is not nominal. It's not 2. But like Reign of Blood has water on it, and if you're playing Downpour, you can repeat this, and it's making 3, 6, 9. That's a lot of fear for no energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Portents of Disaster has perfect elements for the Time Lord. I forget his name.
Fractured Days.
Fractured Days. And he can just kind of just make too much too fast. So that's my thoughts on these really cheap ones. I think Here They Be Monsters also is a 0 cost 3 fear, but it also does a thing.
I mean, you're probably right in terms of power level. I just don't find that to be as fun. Just a card that just generates fear.
It's not, and that's the disappointing thing to me, is it's not as fun. If it were fun, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But because it feels a little too strong and it's not fun, that's where I'm like, dang, I wish you weren't here.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the fun of like tormenting rotflies is that, yeah, usually you're not getting the 4 fear, but
when you do,
yeah, if you have that in your draft and you see a land that has disease and blight and you're like, all right, sure, like that's cool. By and large, though, the minor deck is like 1 fear tacked onto different effects, or 2 fear.
I think that for the most part, the minor power deck is a very healthy mix of good effects without fear, reasonable effects with fear, and then just a couple of cards that stand out. It's like, you do a little too much. Listen here.
Yeah, that's completely fair. What do you feel what do you feel about a card like Favor of the Sun and Starlit Dark, which is it's a card that's a defend 4, push up to 1 blight, and then if you have 2 sun, 1 fear. Like how do you feel about that as a little mini baby threshold to get 1 little fear?
I love it. I wish there were more thresholds in the minor power deck, or even on the unique powers, honestly. I think that they're so cool, and we see them on every single major power. Put them elsewhere. They're really cool.
It's actually kind of interesting. I didn't do the stats on this, but just scrolling through all the minor powers that have fear on them, there's a lot of them with thresholds.
Thresholds are really cool to me. The other type of threshold that exists in the game, but it's very seldom used, is the fear deck itself. Terror level 1, Terror level 2, and Terror level 3. We have Terror Turns to Madness, but we also have a major power that uses it, as well as the fear cards themselves. This is a type of scaling threshold. And I think that's super cool. I would love to be able to see more cards that use that.
Interesting.
We've been spending a decent amount of time about the minor powers, but what about the major powers?
I don't think those generate any fear, actually.
Yeah, that's probably true. We should probably move on.
No, yeah, obviously. Many major powers, I had like around 40 of them, which is, I think, a little under half the deck, generate fear in some way or another. And then, of course, that's skewed by the fact that a lot of major powers have killing potential for towns and cities, which then, in addition to the fear printed on them, they're generating a lot of fear overall. Probably my favorite fear-producing card in this major deck is Paralyzing Fright.
Yeah. Paralyzing Fright does a lot of things. It's really easy to threshold. It makes a lot of fear. When you're playing solo, that's 2 fear cards. It skips everything in one land. It just does so much that you want to do.
And then if its sister, Terrifying Nightmares, which is not quite as much fear, but 6 fear, and then getting to push 4 explorers and towns out of somewhere, also very nice. Not as easy to threshold, but still not terrible for 4 Moon.
It's not as easy. 4 is challenging to get. And
I think I play a lot of Moon Spirits.
That's probably true for you.
Yeah.
It's not just 4 Moon, like that's hard to get. It's 4 of any one element. It requires you to either have 4 plays or like assistants or elements on your tracks, and that's just challenging to do. Notably because if you're going card plays, you're probably not having the energy to play majors, right?
Yeah. Something that's interesting about the major power deck is just that it feels like in some places extra fear is tacked on in places that it really doesn't need to be power wise.
Like if you pens up Calamity,
yeah,
it doing 3 damage for each token seems pretty good, but it also does fear.
Yeah, how about Indomitable Claim's Threshold? In addition to placing a presence, defending 20, skipping all actions at target land, how about 3 fear? Why not? Sure.
Just have some fear.
Yeah.
It's good for the soul.
It really is. I feel like fear is one of those things that it's just like,
this card's not doing enough. What could we do to make it better? Just stick some fear on there.
It's a development knob where once they've designed the rest of the card, if they feel like other parts of the card aren't powerful enough or are too powerful, you can tweak how much fear it generates. That's like a very minute knob, whereas, going up or down 1 energy is a big deal for a lot of cards. And in the case of minor deck, it's a binary. It's either 0 or 1. Unless the card itself charges you for something, but
that's another threshold, by the way.
Yeah,
paying like the cards itself saying pay an extra cost, so
yes,
you can play it for 1 or pay 1 more to do something. It's a type of threshold. I think it's cool.
One of the things I do love about both the minor and major deck is just that there's so many different modularities to it that it's like, there's the traditional elemental thresholds. There's the ors, which are, you get the choice of 2 option. There's the, if X is true, right? If there's a disease there, get 1 extra fear. Then like you said, it's you may pay 1 to make this power fast, or pay 1 to, make it a disease instead of the other types of things spread across the land. It's really cool.
You'd mentioned Terrifying Nightmares and Paralyzing Fright.
Yep.
Here is my hot take. Maybe it's not that hot, but I think the fear on those 2 cards should be swapped.
Interesting. You're probably right.
I've thought that almost from the first day I played the game, like 5 years ago, and that opinion has never changed.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, skipping all actions in target land, in a lot of ways, is better than pushing things. I mean, if you push 4 towns, but there's still a city there, guess what? It's still gonna build.
Yep. It doesn't push a city, and if you are in a spot where you have 4 things, you probably have the city.
Yeah.
And if I compare Terrifying Nightmares, this is unfair to the card, but if I compare that to River Surges and Sunlight, they have a unique power that costs 1, that pushes 3. Do I want to pay 3 more energy for 1 more push and 2 fear? I
still really like Terrifying Nightmares. I'm not all about this.
Me too.
Okay.
Me too.
All right. I don't co-sign this discussion, but no. I agree with you though. 2 extra fear on Terrifying Nightmares would be nice.
And more importantly, 2 less fear and Paralyzing Fright. That card does a lot.
Yeah, but how else will I get my 2 fear cards if I'm playing by myself?
Per turn.
Yeah, and then you get to reclaim 1, and you just do it every single turn.
Mm-hmm. If you were to think about all of these cards that we've looked at, the major and the minor power deck, and you were to pull out 1, which one's your favorite?
Favorite for generating fear? I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say Lands of Right's Rejection because it's one of those just funny cards in the minor deck that it's like, this could be really good, but it never is. It just never is. I'm gonna say Paralyzing Fright. I brought it up. That's mine. What about you?
I think it's Manifest Incarnation.
Okay, interesting.
That card excites me. Most of the time, it doesn't do what it needs to do because it's really expensive, the range is really restricting, and it's slow. But whenever you get all of the things, all the conditions just right, this card can make like 30 fear.
In that game we played right before this episode, I did just play this card, and yeah, it is really nice. It's a decent way of getting rid of cities towards the end of the game while still generating enough fear to get you to that terror level 3.
Mm-hmm. The threshold, more often than not, I find is not as useful as just playing another card that says defend on it.
Yeah, if you've got it.
But yeah, that is something about that card.
Manifest Incarnation is one of those cards that's in like that bell curve meme where you first start playing and you're like, wow, this card is awesome, it does a lot of stuff, and then you play a little more and you're like, oh no, I don't want it to ravage, that could be blight placement, no, and then you become, even better at the game, and you're like, oh yeah, who cares, that's great, actually, I'll defend it, and the Dahan will get even more things off the board.
I can ravage twice in the Dahan get to attack twice.
Yep. Yeah, defend is not used up. Is there any card in the major deck? What do you think is like underwhelming, like fear generation wise?
Unearth the Beast of Wrathful Stone makes me sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get sad when I think about that card. I used to get excited because a roaming beast that just pops up and, well,
Yeah, man.
starts beating up places, but I've tried making it work a couple times and it's too hard.
You don't like Baby Emberhead Behemoth?
No, not for me. That one's underwhelming to me, too much so.
I kind of find that a lot of the major power deck cards that generate one fear, to me, it's almost just like, why? Why bother? Like,
Yeah.
if you're not going to get me at least 2 fear, it's like, why does it need to be on the card? Obviously, it's not a bad thing that it generates fear, but it's just kind of like...
It all adds up.
Like, I'm looking at, like, Winds of Rust and Atrophy, right? Which is 1 fear, defend 6, replace a city with a town, or a town with an explorer. Defending 6 and getting rid of a city is pretty decent for 3 energy. Tacking 1, it's like, either tack 2 fear on or forget about it, man.
Well, that card repeats. It is 2 fear.
No one's thresholding that all the time. You're right. It does repeat. That is fair. You were such a threshold guy, man.
Thresholds are where it's at.
All right. Well, that's the major and minor power deck. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about them.
Same. So, in preparation for this episode, I was reading through Eric Royce's Spirit Island Design Diary for Fear and Victory. And the most shocking thing about this was that fear was one of the last things added to the game.
That's crazy.
It blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because, to me, fear is foundational to the game.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really shocking to me is like the number of iterations that fear went through, in that it wasn't always a scaling card. It was something that was definitive. You knew what it was. And seeing the progression through this design diary, I really enjoyed reading. Should definitely put a link for the video or the podcast so that others can look it up.
Link in the show notes. Yeah. There's a big long diary of the development of fear, and the various things that Eric kind of tried. And yeah, there was a point at which it was like a Command Beasts-esque version, like. Mm-hmm. Instead of the traditional fear deck. And yeah, no, I mentioned it up top, but it's just like, it's a genius design. This, if you were to just say like, yeah, you have to get 50 points to win, and that's that with Spirit Island, it's like that's nothing. That stinks. What the fear system does is it hits you with dopamine anytime you uncover a fear card. It breaks up this giant goal into little pieces, as well as giving you different ways of winning the game. I would like to, at some point, do a whole episode on win and loss conditions, because between like all the adversaries and scenarios and stuff, there's a ton of them in this game. But just to say that, like, the fact that you can theoretically wipe everything off the board before you even get to Terror Level 2 and win the game that way.
Have you ever done
crazy. That? No, of course not. Have you?
Yes.
Ooh, interesting.
Yes, a handful of times.
Really? On lower difficulties or higher ones?
So I've done it on level 6 adversaries.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. I think so. I've done it solo a handful of times. I've done it 2-player, I think,
Hmm.
twice. And then I really wanted to push the limits of how fast can you win. And it turns out you can win on turn 1 with Wildfire at a reduced difficulty.
Yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I've come very close with Wildfire just playing kind of normally. So I could imagine if you tweak it, no initial explorer or whatever. Um yeah, I can see it happening. But yeah, I mean it's a genius design that more likely, you're constantly weighing the choice between, am I trying to wipe out all the cities or am I trying to go all the way with fear? Basically every game, I think, if you're playing Spirit Island right, when you get to late game, you need to have a turn, have a growth phase where you sit down and you talk with the other people at the table and say, "Look, are we going for destroying the cities or are we just trying to kind of delay their ravages until we can get all of the fear?" And I think that is such a cool design choice that um they are two different ways to win, but at the same time, it's the same system, right? It's still the
Yes.
same fear track. It's just how far you end up going on it, and that is so cool for this game.
That little bit there is also the pivot, the point where you go, all right, guys, time to lock in. I think we have that victory. Or perhaps you're on the cusp of defeat. And you're trying to eke out the victory while you still can. Something that the design diary also brought up was that there's this desire to have defend spirits in the game, and at some point the expectation is that they pivot to then start winning. In the base game, we see Vital Strength of the Earth, and they are hard to win on. They're a really strong defensive spirit, not strong in the capabilities of winning, but strong in the sense of this is what they're oriented to do. And over time, we have seen other spirits be very strong at defending, but then also produce fear. Do we think that that is a design decision that's like shifted over time?
Yeah, almost certainly. I think you know, Vital Strength of the Earth is an interesting spirit. Like I kind of like it a little bit, but it is not the best at teaching players how to win the game because you play that spirit and you're like, "Cool, I prevented the blight." But that doesn't win you the game. That that
Mm-hmm.
that, that will never win you the game. And in fact, like I mentioned at the beginning of it, it's not a tug of war. It's two different tracks. The invaders are trying to get somewhere and you're trying to get somewhere. But even it goes beyond that because if you run out of invader cards in the invader deck, you also lose.
Instant
So you're
loss.
kind of, yeah, you're on a time limit for that. You're on a limit of blight, and then they're on a limit of either if you get all their buildings out or if you get all the way to the fear deck. Like it's kind of multiple different tracks that you're playing, and just because you're preventing a loss doesn't mean you are aiming towards a win.
Yeah, and you see this in almost all cooperative style games that trying to win and trying to not lose aren't the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why you have to have that conversation of, are we going for all the fear cards or are we going for all the cities or all the cities and towns or
Mm-hmm.
whatever? Because if you don't have that conversation, you're just kind of dirtling around and then, oh no, the invader deck's out and you lose.
Mm-hmm. That's actually for me why I think paralyzing fright does it too much is because it doesn't make you choose. It says, "Oh, we
Mm.
aren't losing and we're winning."
Hmm. Interesting.
Two fear cards, if you just reclaim that card every turn, you will win in a pretty fast fashion.
To go back to like the talking about the design
Mm-hmm.
and how things change, you brought up Eyes Watching the Trees earlier. I think Eyes is like a beautiful evolution of something like Vital Strength or whatever, where it is about defending. It is a very defensive spirit, but the fact that it can pull the Han in means that it can kill towns easy. It can generate fear that way. And so you're not just preventing them from blighting and preventing a loss, but you are also succeeding at getting towards that fear goal.
Yeah. Eyes is in the Horizons box, and I'm impressed at how each of these feels like an iteration of an iteration of an iteration for Spirit
Yeah,
Island. The design on these spirits is so close to perfect.
yeah, 100%.
It's Eyes is not a most of these spirits are not something that I want to play most of the time because they're not the complexity that I'm looking for, But whenever I
Mm.
sit down and really think about the design of these guys, it just doesn't get better than this.
Yeah, I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but one of the things that's helped me with playing two-handed, which is not something I particularly like doing or am good at, but I want to kind of get that two-player experience for the sake of the podcast, especially um, throwing eyes onto whatever main spirit I'm focusing on is just kind of a great low complexity, simple way to add a second spirit to control a second spirit. If you don't really want to control a second spirit, Eyes' plan is a little bit on rails, not 110% on rails, but so on rails that you can easily kind of tune it out until any of the stupid adversaries increase the health on things, and then that whole economy of Dahan attacks, counterattacks goes out the window. Up until that point, Ice is like a really chill spirit to throw on top of your Starlight game or whatever when you're trying to do something else really complicated.
Two-handed is always a challenge,
Yeah.
even whenever you have pretty simple spirits like eyes. So all this
Mm.
talk about fear, but we haven't talked about any of the fear cards.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Fear cards are a little tricky to talk about.
They are.
In part because there's 3 levels to each of them, and also, I don't know about you, but none of the names mean anything to me. I never read the names.
Some of the names stand out to me, and I know
Hmm.
them as for that part, but not all of them. Most of them, in fact, I don't know. But like demoralized, I know because it demoralizes me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that one. It makes me sad. Um,
What does that do?
what does it do? Tier 1,
Yeah.
defend 1 everywhere. Tier 2, defend 2 everywhere. And tier 3, there's a tier 3 effect, okay? Defend 3 everywhere.
Listen. This is a hill that me and Kaylin fought on a lot. Is just I am pro-ish to like area defense. Your that minor power that puts like 2
Yeah.
defense in all of your lands or whatever. I am pro it. Kaylin was very against it. I am pro it in general, but I do have to say demoralized is at least at level 1 is not at all where you want
It's
to
too
be.
little at all
Oh.
points in the game.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Sometimes this card will save your
Yeah,
bacon though.
for
It is better
sure.
than it is better than some that do basically nothing unless the stars align and the Dahan are in the right position and the beasts are prowling at night. Like
Uh, the other one that always stands
yeah.
out to me is Angry Mobs. It
Yeah.
just removes so many things. And then there's one more. I don't remember the name of it, but when I see it, I know what the effect is. But there's like 3, and the rest of them are like, oh, I have to read this because I don't know what it does.
Yeah. Yeah, well the thing too is that even if you've played this game a long time, there are a lot of fear cards, and odds are there's probably one level of at least one fear card you've just never seen, right? I
The
mean,
odds are incredibly high, in fact.
yeah.
You see maybe like, I don't know, 10 fear cards a game. That's probably on the upper end. Not at every tier, and there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of iterations where you could see them in different orders. I haven't seen
Mhm.
every tier in the game at least.
Right, and then on top of that, there's also times when one of those will do absolutely nothing on the board, and your
Yeah.
brain wipes it as if it never actually happened. So
Scapegoats. That's the card that I know by name.
yeah.
It just destroys so many things.
Mhm.
Especially a late game scapegoats almost wipes the board for you.
In the game we just played, as
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, we had 3 tier 3 fear cards built up and just 1 city left on the island, and I was pushing. I'm like, just send it, dude, because come on. There's so many of these that are like, remove 3 health or destroy a city in a land with, I think there was like a disease there or something. Like so many of these that could do something or hey, put a strife on it, right? And -1 health per strife. That sort of thing. No. No, we couldn't. We couldn't. We
Nothing.
didn't even get to do 1 damage to it. Like, yeah. I feel like if you play long enough, you do kind of get the vibe of certain things. Like, for instance, if you want to play a little risky and you don't have a land completely protected, you could push Dahan into it And then there is a significant number of cards that either does defense or damage based on the amount of Dahan there. Granted, you could be sending that Dahan right to its death, pretty quickly in a Ravage that is not defended for. But that is kind of like a way to think about it. And if you're a spirit that doesn't particularly care about the Dahan, who cares?
Yeah. That sort of arithmetic is something that I'm thinking about all the time. Is can I make it so that I can rely on that fear card? What are the odds that this fear card will just do the job for me? I have a defend 3 in my hand, but what if I just don't do that?
Yeah.
So that's one of the types of cards in the fear deck are defend, especially defend where the Dahan are. The next type of fear card that we see frequently is kind of like defend. It's add strife. There's a lot of these that add strife.
Yeah, and it makes sense because strife is mental anguish, and fear is definitely a cause of mental anguish.
Absolutely. The next type of card that we see is removal or destruction of rarely cities, at least until Terra Level 3, but frequently explorers and sometimes towns.
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out as I'm scrolling through the fear cards here to Unsettled, which is a
Yeah.
card that at Terra level 1 can downgrade a town or city in a land with Dahan, Strife, or Beasts. That is really cool.
Yes.
At Terra level 1, the fact that, I mean, you don't get the fear from it, right? And it would still turn into a town, but the fact that you could do something about a city at Terra level 1, pretty nice. And the fact that it includes Dahan, it's like, yeah, there might not be Strife there or a Beast there, but there's a good chance there's Dahan somewhere where there's a city.
For sure.
I didn't mean to break your flow. Sorry.
Oh no, absolutely. Like I'm just listening to this as well, and I agree 100%. I'm just trying to partition these, to like categorize them because whenever I'm thinking about what to do with the fear cards before I see them, knowing these sort of categories makes it so that I can make more aggressive decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
Having this knowledge in your pocket will allow you to be able to make better plays. Of course, plays that will lose the game sometimes because of that, but perhaps don't do it when it would lose you the game. So, one card that stands out to me, it's two cards actually, and we saw both of them in the game that we played.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's the ones that stop them from building and stop them from exploring.
Yeah, we did see both of those.
Back to back on two different turns.
And when you say stop, what it really means is you put a pause on that. Those cards don't go away; they get built up.
Yeah. So the Explorers Are Reluctant is one of them, and I don't remember the name of the other one. But this is one of the cards that I think is worse at Terror Level 2 than it is at Terror Level 1 or 3.
Mm.
I think at Terror Level 1, just having a skip is very pleasant on the lowest numbered land. But at Terror Level 2, it often means that your flow is being broken up at some point, where they're no longer ravaging, and you are a defense spirit, and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do this turn? And then they're ravaging everywhere.
Yep.
It's a bit overwhelming. Immigration slows, that's the other one.
Right. Well, so it's important to bring up that, like, there is kind of a class of fear cards that are not necessarily, like, unequivocally negative, but that in certain situations are negative. Fear cards are not always helpful. Now, this is like a minority of a minority. You wouldn't generally try to, like, play around this like crazy, but one of them, the ones you mentioned come to mind for sure. That, like, it can be a good thing to get you a respite from ravaging, but it could also be a bad thing that, it causes problems all at once. Another kind of interesting card is something like Depopulation, where at Terror level 1, it says replace a town with an explorer. Now, a lot of times, that's good. If the land's going to ravage early in the game and there's just one explorer there instead of one town, well, boom, that saves your bacon. But other times, if the Dahan were going to counterattack and destroy that town, this is not a May effect. You have to replace one town with one explorer, and that
just lost that fear.
Yeah, and that's not a huge deal. I'm not upset about it like some people seem to be sometimes. But That wasn't shade at you. I don't know why I said it like it was like like some people on this podcast were
Some
crying about
people.
it. No, but like it is interesting to note that there are situations when fear cards are not helpful. And it's important to know that there are situations in the game, many of them, and many of them on fear cards that are may effects or up to 1 or up to 2 or whatever that give you the option of just not doing it if it's detrimental to you. And then there's some that just kind of force your hand.
Yeah, this has happened to me at least once, and it's memorable. It creates those moments when you've played the
Mhm.
game hundreds of times. But if you ever have a stricken on the event, making it so that they don't ravage,
Yep.
where there's disease or strife, and then the fear card puts strife in that land that you have beautifully set up to ravage, it is. It's gut wrenching.
Yeah. Um it is also frustrating seeing fear cards that do absolutely nothing. That it's not that the fear cards built in that they have nothing, but it's like, on a coastal land with the Han or something like that, and there just isn't any.
Yeah.
It's a product of the fact that like this is not a video game. This is a well, I guess it has one, but it's based on the board game.
Technically,
Yeah. But this is a game that the game can't possibly know if you have something relevant there. It just can't. And you could theoretically say, I'm going to toss that card because it does nothing and draw a new one. Some people, I'm sure, house rule it that way. But other than doing that, there's not a way that the game can really know.
yeah. And I think that leads me to the question of, is the fear deck too random? Sometimes it does a lot, sometimes it does nothing, and sometimes it's somewhere in between.
I would say no.
I think it fits. I agree. I don't think it's too random either, but it is something to think about.
A few episodes ago, we kind of like asked people like, do you play without events? Like, are you one of those people that hates events? Because there's some people that really strongly dislike events, and I kind of wonder, do you think there's people that play without fear cards? Do you think do you think there's people that hate even this
Oh
level
man.
of kind of randomness? Because I think maybe you said it, but fear cards are they were kind of the original event deck. It's just that everything is mostly positive.
They are an event deck, yes. If you look at base Spirit Island, there are very, very, very few random effects in the
Mm-hmm.
game. Off of memory, there's only three, in fact. There's the powers that you see
Yep.
during your draft, and if you could actually win without that. So that means that there's only two. And so that means that you have the fear deck and the invader deck. And the invader deck is narrow in scope that it's usually a 50-50, and you can plan for either to come up.
Yeah.
It makes the game feel very puzzly because you can resolve those situations without all this randomness. And that's, in my mind, why the event deck is mandatory, because without it, there's just not enough volatility in the base rule set.
Yeah, it's enough to play, 10 games of Spirit Island and put it back on the shelf like you would any other board game. I
And that's a
personally,
good game.
yes, it's a solid game. I think the event deck really takes it to like lifestyle game territory where you play tons. I mean that and the adversaries and the amount of spirits, of course. But yeah, no, it really helps make each game feel like it's not just the same thing happening. And yeah, the fear deck helps that as well. And I dig that. I think it's really cool that the fear deck does also create these unique situations, and by proxy of there being three different stages on them and there being so many fear cards, you're just never going to see all of it. There's always going to
Yeah.
be a game where some weird thing happens, and there's games where the fear card really genuinely snatches victory from the jaws of defeat. There's games when the card can absolutely ruin everything for you. Not often, but rarely. Maybe you need one more fear and it downgrades that town.
Sometimes you have three cards at Terror level 2, you're one fear away and you can't get it, and a fear card actually makes the fear to get another fear card.
Oh yeah, and any fear
That's
card.
exciting.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but any fear card, and there's not a lot of them that do this, but any fear card that can generate fear, either by destroying a town or a city or just giving you fear, is really nice. The chaining effect, that feels so satisfying.
It does not happen often, but when it does, it's something to go home about.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that there's one last thing that really I wanted to talk about in that fear is a lever to play with, specifically with adversaries.
Hmm.
So, whenever you're making that initial fear deck, you are not just putting 3/3/3, but sometimes you have 4/4/4 or 6/6/4 or whatever it is for the adversary, and that makes the adversaries feel very different.
Yeah, 100%. And there's even one very special adversary that that requires more fear to get to the next fear card.
England. Yeah,
Hmm.
so that's, and if you don't do it, you get a little slap on the wrist. Spook us. Another one
Yeah.
is Russia, where they put cards in the fear deck, and they kind of slap you on the wrist for going through the deck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool layer to the game where if you can manipulate how many fear cards that you can get through the design, when you can get them, that creates dynamic flow.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't like it. Like Scotland, I feel like you're in terror level 1 for so long, and the fear cards just don't feel valuable as a result. But
Mm-hmm.
other times it's really snappy, and that feels exciting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very cool that they've factored that heavily into the design of the adversaries and the modular levels of them. And in theory, if you ever want to increase the difficulty of the game, you could just pop an extra fear card wherever you want in the fear deck, right? I mean,
You can. I'm actually a little shocked that rules as written, that's not somewhere in there.
no, they cover a
We've
lot of
got
stuff, but
second adversary, we've got a
extra
whole nother
board,
board,
yep,
we've got scenarios,
playing without events, yeah.
but nothing like just stick a fear card in the deck.
Hmm. Hmm. Stick a fear card in me. I'm done. um. Yeah. So I guess in closing, there's that one event card that makes you discard earned fear cards.
I hate that event.
And I should find what event that is. Talk for a minute. I'm gonna find it.
That event makes me so frustrated, especially when I'm playing a spirit that can look at the fear cards. Oh man, I just want to throw that event away.
Um.
There are some events that I've thrown away.
So so it's overconfidence is one of them. If you have any earned fear cards, discard 2 of them now. Otherwise, move 2 earned fear markers at stage 1. Oh, and I guess stage 2 and 3 also do that, and do 1+1 damage per land when ravaging. And then Terror Spikes upwards lets you resolve the fear card immediately, so that one's not as bad.
No, that's
Actually,
fine.
that one's great because you resolve it at
Yeah.
terror level above. But sorry, overconfidence and terror breeds aggression.
Overconfidence, that one.
Yeah.
Oof.
So anyway, the point I was making is just that to judge how important like fear is to this game and how much like the fear deck matters and how I don't know, just my feelings about it. When I get that event and it makes me lose those fear cards, it feels terrible.
Gut wrenching.
It doesn't matter if those like even if you have every land solved, right, and you weren't relying on those fear cards to do anything crazy, it still feels
Those are
terrible.
my fear cards.
Yes.
Give them to me.
Yes. So my overall feelings is just that the fear system as a whole, breaking it up with cards, just all the different ways they manipulate them and manipulate fear and gaining it and stuff. Even though it's not something that I am super high on in terms of just like let me just play one card to generate fear. I want more on my cards, but like it's still something that I see as very important and very crucial to the game, and I'm very emotionally attached to, I guess. So, fear is a factor to me.
The fear factor.
Yes, that is correct. I am not Daredevil because I am a man with fear, and that is important to me. Yeah. Any other closing statements on fear?
No, I think that we talked about just about everything that I wanted to.
Nice.
I would like to move on to
Yep.
a very exciting segment for me, and that's this card draft that I found earlier today.
Okay, so yes, we are doing once an episode. We're doing a real, not simulated card draft. This was an actual thing that happened in someone's game. If you would like to submit your own, please join our Discord server, link in the description, and submit your own, and maybe it'll be featured in a future episode. But this time, our good friend Thomas here has one for us.
Yeah, I was playing Wounded Waters Bleeding against England 6. Solo game. I'm on board E. We flip over the jungles, and my first draft is Absorb Corruption, Hazard Spread across the island, Cycles of Tide and Time, and Bat Scout for Raids by Darkness. And I think that there's one wrong answer and 3 discussions to have about the other cards. What would you do?
Yeah, so it is interesting to note that Wounded Waters Bleeding is one of those spirits that has just kind of a lot going on. There's a lot of
Sure does.
things to remember about. You get your either your water or your beast. You have paths to go on and things in the game. So knowing you, I'm sure you picked something that would give you. Maybe I'm not sure, but I think you'd be likely to pick one of the ones that give you one of those 2 elements. And of these cards, only Cycles of Time and Tide and Bat Scout for Raids by Darkness do that. I think I would eliminate Absorb Corruption. I don't hate that card, but it is not on element and just kind of not, I don't know, not exciting to me.
I agree. I think that's the wrong answer. The biggest boon to it is that you get to gather Blight into your land, so it's easy to remove it, but that's not good enough.
Well, here's the thing. This is also turn 1 of your game, right?
Yeah, this is a not lose style card.
Yeah, exactly. Later on in the game, there are definitely times when you might want to, bunch together Blight for a major power card or to prevent you from cascading and losing, but not now. Yeah, so then what we're left with is Hazard Spread across the land, which is just overall a fantastic card, and on a single board, as long as you have a centralized Sacred Zone like you do, you're going to be able to reach anywhere. So, and the disease hasn't gone away yet, because we're still turn 1. So that's something to consider. Also, being 0
You're
cost
also
is
a
nice.
beast spirit. You have a lot of opportunity to place a lot of beasts.
Mm-hmm. But the downside of this card is that it's not on element. So I feel like you didn't take it. Looking at the other cards, I've recently said that Bat Scout for Raids by Darkness is a card I literally don't recognize. Since then, I've paid more attention to the card specifically, and I don't know. I'm kind of lukewarm on a lot of 1 damage to town/city, unless you're playing like Downpour or something that can consistently repeat it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Personally, yes. But I will say, being on element and then also 1 fear gather up to 2 Dahan is not like the worst thing. And I guess worth noting, because of this specific spirit, Sanguinary Taint. No.
Yeah.
No.
That's
no.
the name.
Stop. I'm an adult. Sanguinary. I'm sorry. Because that's a damage dealing power. Doing 1 damage to town/cities in conjunction with that, right? Very easy to hit the top level of that 2 animal. It is more helpful. But I'm gonna be honest. I really like Cycles of Time and Tide. Both sides of this effect are nice to me. That if there's Coastal Dahan, which there currently is on the board, to start, you get to add a Dahan, or if there's no Dahan, remove a Blight, which there's no Blight coastally right now, but setting yourself up to get extra Dahan in there immediately is nice. Now, going by Wounded Waters, I don't have all of the cards like memorized, like with the healing and wounded, whatever. I don't know. Looking at it, I kind of think Bat Scout for Raids by Darkness might be the pick, even though I was down on that card. Looking at it in this specific situation, it might be the pick. What did you go with?
I agree with you. I think Bat Scout for Raids by Darkness is the best pick here. What it allows you to do is you can gather 2 Dahan from land 8 into land 7, and you now have 2 animals, and you can push the Dahan from land 5 into land 3. After the build, you can just say, I'll accept a blight on land 3, places the town will get destroyed by the Dahan when Dahan dies, no big deal. And there's roughly, not exactly, but roughly, a 90% chance that you will draw a defend 5 for you to be able to defend land number 7 with Dahan in it. That's pretty impactful.
So how'd the game go?
Well, I picked Cycles of Time and Tide, and I lost.
Awesome. Good. Okay, so we were vindicted. We're correct.
I think that was the
best...
correct choice.
Yeah.
I think what happened that I noticed was Cycles of Time and Tide pushes you towards this water path for healing, and downgrades against England pretty strong, so you don't get overwhelmed with buildings. That didn't happen to me. I just didn't make enough fear. And after playing through this game, I really connected with that, and I was like, I need to talk about this on the episode. I didn't make fear, and fear is so important.
Yeah. I kind of think if I was gut picking this, if I wasn't really sitting here and severely thinking about it, I probably would just take Hazards, because Hazards is
zero cost. It does a lot.
Yeah. Universally good, and as you mentioned, there is like some beast synergy with Wounded Waters. So I think that's a good pick too. But because it doesn't really have defensive capabilities, and because it's turn 1, I think Cycles of Time and Tide is the wrong choice. I think in a world where you're playing a defensive spirit, or if you had this was your second draft and your first draft was like, defend 5 or something, that would be the pick, and you just rely on Dahan counterattack, but not in this situation. Shoutouts to Luns on the Discord server, the Spirited Discussion Discord server, who also said that that's the play, that bats is the correct play, and then you can use bats plus your innate to wipe out a town, and you're set up really well.
There's a lot of permutations for what you can do with bats on turn 1. The route that I was taking is a particularly greedy play, where you actually don't have the answer, but if you find it, you're set up to be very powerful. But that was the game.
Yeah. So if you would like to be a part of this, either submitting your own draft that happened in a game, digitally or physically, or if you just want to kind of comment on some of the drafts that have been placed, please do so in our Discord server, and we might include it. We might include the draft, or we might also include whatever banter or discussion or options people present in that chat as well.
This has been a wonderful, spirited discussion, Alex.
Yes. And if there's anything that we didn't cover fear-related that you're like, oh man, like I really wish they'd talk about, I don't know, whatever aspect of fear we didn't mention, don't worry, there's always future episodes. This was a big one. We covered a lot of ground in this fear episode.
So speaking of future episodes, what's the next one?
All right, next up, it is going to be Thomas's first box review. Ooh.
I'm excited.
We are going Feather and Flame. A box that you can still currently purchase, thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to play along with us, hey, get some practice in with Scotland, with the 4 spirits included in the box, and with a bunch of aspects and some fear cards.
We didn't talk about those very specific fear cards. We might do that next time, though.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I'm Alex.
I'm Thomas.
See you later.